That's what we look for here on the Horror Happens radio show, here on Homegrown Radio. Macon, Jeremy, to say that independent film is something that you guys embody with Blue Ruin, and on a more of a comic sense, Macon with you, with Hellbenders, is an understatement. And I'm just happy to know that Macon's character did not reach from Hellbenders to Blue Ruin, because it really would have been No Country for Old Men with an Idiot. It really would have been if they went ahead and did that. Macon Blair, Jeremy Saulnier, welcome to the show. I don't even know where to start with Blue Ruin, because after watching it, I've watched it twice now. Once before as part of the end of the year, and now once leading into this conversation. Blue Ruin really is a study in connection to the audience, in filmmaking done on a level that isn't bare bones, but it's pretty close, and getting the most for what you put out there. And I think that's a great way to start with it. I've seen a lot of the conversations, interviews you guys have had on YouTube. Instead of Jeremy going first, Macon, you're going to go first this time. And
all right. Wait a second.
I knew that was coming.
Shut up, Jeremy.
Macon Blair, you've been in a variety of different projects. We talk about Hellbenders and Blue Ruin as the most recent. You've been best friends with Jeremy forever, from what I grasp. What made for you? What in Jeremy did you see that made Blue Ruin work for the fans out there and critics and yourselves this year?
Well, boy, that's a good one. I've had tremendous confidence in Jeremy since we were young men, and this was just something that he's been trying to do. Not specifically this story necessarily, although that has been cooking for a while, but trying to get a movie off the ground with me in the lead. And so, when somebody gives you an opportunity like that, then you tend to leap at it. The fact that he really knows his way around storytelling and cameras and all the technical side of it is an additional bonus. But even if he was a complete idiot, I would still be delighted to, jump at the chance to play a lead that somebody had crafted with me specifically in mind. So it was a great month.
I was going to say, Macon, there's a power and a responsibility with your lead role as Dwight. And it really is, you are the centerpiece of that film, whether it's the actual mission to take revenge, or it's the ability to bring humor, deliver dialogue. A wide scope goes into Blue Ruin that makes it really, really effective. And for you, looking at this character of Dwight, what was your initial thoughts as Jeremy sat down with you and hashed out what he was looking for with Dwight from Blue Ruin?
Yeah, we've kind of I've heard that before, and not to be repetitive, but the actual answer is that I was kind of reluctant, and to a certain degree was kind of trying to talk Jeremy out of having me as the lead. And the reason was because originally, the idea was that this was going to be a much funnier, kind of broad, shenanigans-based movie, still with a beach bum character, but just goofier. Yeah. And at a certain point, it shifted, and it became what he described as a very stark revenge movie. And before I was really aware of what it was going to be, I kind of had this idea that he was talking about, what you would normally think of when somebody says revenge movie with a badass, tough guy doing tough guy things. And I just thought you've got the wrong person for that. And then he went on to very patiently explain that that's precisely the point. We do have the wrong person, and that's the whole concept, is doing the very traditional macho male kind of action movie, and then putting a totally inept dude that has no business doing those types of things in the center of it, and hopefully that would make it stand out from, like all the other revenge sort of themed movies that have come for the last however long movies have been invented. So.
You know what, Jeremy? You look at the way Macon brings to life Dwight, and it reminds me a little bit not only of No Country for Old Men, which I didn't really realize until after listening to you two talk about it, but in a sense, Ichi the Killer. It reminds me a little bit of that film in the fact that it's built on reputation, it's built on things that have happened, and for the fans out there who have not seen Blue Ruin, I highly recommend it. Pick it up, go on Netflix and watch it, because you're going to see a film with not only tremendous direction and pace for the story, but you're also going to see something that I had not realized. You know, you are a cinematographer by trade, amazing camera work, and an intelligence for the equipment that you use and what is set up, because it's a 30-day shoot from what I understand, and you use the Canon camera to be able to film Blue Ruin. Talk a little bit first about the technology and cinematography of Blue Ruin.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working in the trenches of indie film, doing camera work for a lot of friends of mine that are directors, and it was really me witnessing this rapid evolution of camera technology over the past 3 to 5 years, where I really thought it was the right crossroads for me to take a stab at directing again, because I'd been kind of on sidelines recovering from my first movie, Murder Party.
Yeah.
Which was shot standard definition, with a pretty expensive camera package. And now, these small cameras that I've been using for corporate videos were delivering really great imagery, and they weighed 5 pounds, and they could take, still camera lenses and everything. So I just thought I could use some of that trade craft that I'd been learning on the road, doing these little interview setups and architectural photography using a little 5-foot or 4-foot slider. I'd gotten so used to that, and it was just ingrained in sort of extension of my body. I could run around myself with a backpack and a small tripod and a slider and get amazing stuff. So I was like, let me just employ that in the fields of the narrative filmmaking world, but not make the mistakes of so many of my colleagues, which is to bite off more than you can chew, to write a script in a vacuum and then try and force it upon the world and then go for cast you can't afford. And so I was able to engineer it from a technological point of view and a pragmatic point of view and logistical point of view, where Macon and I just sat down and wrote a laundry list of things we had at our disposal, including the camera I owned, the locations we had between us and our friends and our family, and just incorporated that all into the script from the very beginning. So that was the key, was to engineer it from the very beginning, knowing the constraints and embracing them. And that included the camera, but as important to that, the lesson is it's not really the camera, it's just whatever you can afford and whatever you have access to. It's all about what you put in front of the camera. So it was all about, we're going to go on the road, we're going to do, blood work, gun work, car work, all the things you're not supposed to do on a low budget, but we'll sort of shoot it on our home turf and use it to our advantage and not skimp out in that way. And as a cinematographer, I was also very insistent upon making sure this was a visual film, and not because of any grand vision, because I knew this is about a single character. He's often alone.
Yeah.
And he can't talk to anybody, so it has to be visually striking and has to sort of, I had to guide people through the narrative with just a camera and my buddy, and often a blue, rusty Pontiac sedan. That's all I had, but that's all I needed.
You know what? If I may say, I have a 1990s Pontiac LE, and I'm pretty proud of my car. But you know what? You find that comfort level, and I think, Blue Ruin, which you can find more at BlueRuinMovie.com and on Twitter at BlueRuinMovie. It's a collection, in my opinion, Jeremy, of snapshots into the darkness and the soul of the character Dwight, and whether you're shooting in Rehoboth Beach, you're on the road on property that is very secluded, you find those moments in Blue Ruin where you can identify with the character. And I think that's something that people don't realize when they see Blue Ruin, is that you and Macon, at the point when you guys were making this film, it was a critical point in your life, not much different, well, different in the circumstances, but not much different for the character of Dwight and the families that are warring, the Hatfields and the McCoys almost within there. Talk a little bit about that. First of all, Jeremy, you talk about that personal connection that went into Blue Ruin and the time in your life with you and Macon where it was almost do or die.
Oh, for sure. I mean, career-wise, it was certainly do or die for both Macon and myself. And that's why it was such a great comfort to sort of lean on each other and trust in each other, even when we didn't have full confidence in ourselves. Where Macon had reservations about the character and how he could sort of helm this film as the lead role in these action scenarios. I had full faith in him, and likewise, I was really sort of a con man up until we shot.
Yeah.
Because I was just trying to get this thing off the ground, and I usually pride myself on my what I believe is integrity and whatnot. So I had to bullshit people and lie and say we had money in place to certain, like the casting directors when we did not. And I just, I had to accept the fact that I wouldn't risk anyone else's career. I wouldn't sully their reputations, but I had to risk my reputation, because if I didn't come through on all the promises that I made, I would be one of those creepy bastards out there making movies, and bouncing checks and whatnot. So no, it was a great situation because, again, how we embraced our limitations in the script phase and the production phase.
Yeah,
we tried to go out and get money from other people, and that failed as well. And it ended up being such a boon because we didn't have to go through any notes, script revisions, nothing.
Wow.
And it was a very pure vision that Macon and I had, and it was ultimately the only way this film could have gotten made was without having to do things the traditional way, without having to cast certain leads that have foreign sales value. Just like we had to do it ourselves, and it just again remained pure. So it was great.
I was going to say the experience, and pure is a great word. Macon, you hear Jeremy talk about it. That point in your life, as from what I understand, you were either having or you had your first child in your family, and it's an amazing time. But you got to jump into the shoes of Dwight and get this movie going and be a part of actually wear so many hats between you and Jeremy and a few others. How was it during that time for you getting Blue Ruin off the ground and going?
Frankly, it was nerve-wracking. I mean, it definitely did feel like this was sort of the last shot. My wife and I, we had not had our first kid yet. She was getting ready to, though, so we had this sort of opening, this period of that fall of 2012 when we had to get something in the can, because it just felt like financially, age-wise, reputation-wise, like everything was kind of going to be off the table after that, and it wouldn't feel practical to go run around and try and have it be like we're going to make this one last indie movie to try and make a name for ourselves when there's a newborn baby at home. Like we had to get it out of the way at that point, and also when I say it's Jeremy and myself, and then also this cluster of other guys that we all grew up with and had been trying to get other movies off the ground for a lot of years, and they would come close, and they would almost get funded, and then they wouldn't, and it was starting, speaking for myself anyway, to feel really kind of desperate, like, oh shit, dude, I thought when I was a young kid that I would be able to make a living doing movies, but then in the last 10 or so years, it was starting to feel more and more out of reach. And so it finally tried, like Jeremy said, tried to get some money for this one off the ground. That didn't work. Jeremy and his wife really recklessly threw all of their financial value behind it, and then we did a Kickstarter campaign, and sort of just in these little drips and drabs, it started to come together and actually work. And that felt great, but at the same time, it was kind of like, oh, okay, now we're here, and you have your at-bat, and also you're going to play the lead. And so if this thing stinks, then, a lot of the responsibility is going to fall on the guy who's in every scene. So then I started to kind of psych myself out, and it became less about like, we've got to make a movie, we've got to do it, and more about like, you're gonna fuck it up, you're gonna fuck it up, you're gonna fuck it up.
Wow. Hey, you know what?
And then it was just sort of fake it until you can make it, you know. We just did it as best we could.
Yeah. Well, the film is Blue Ruin. It's out there right now, considered by many to be one of the best of the year for 2014. It's hit the festival circuit. It's available on Netflix, DVD, Blu-ray. And Macon, I got to be honest with you, the ghost who's here in the bunker with me, we tried that drinking game you suggested. How many times your eyes bug out, your facial expressions, and
Did you go to the hospital?
blood poisoning, absolutely, alcohol poisoning, absolutely. But it was, I'm taking one for the team, all right? Just understand that. Taking one for the team here. But Macon, you know, whether it's Hellbenders or Blue Ruin, you have a great way of emoting with your body and your face. One of the scenes that really hits home for me is when Wade is released from prison and you're sitting there viewing him for the first time and all the pomp and circumstance around, to many people, this monster. And one of the great things, Jeremy, that goes into this is there's a lot of holes in Dwight. And I'm not talking about his inability or ability to pull out the mission to get revenge and protect his family, but there's a lot of holes that we don't even know before Dwight comes onto the screen and why he's left. But Macon, you seem to embody that, encompass that, and show great range with your eyes and your facial expressions. Talk a little bit about those kind of tools at your disposal, and also that scene where you're seeing Wade out for the first time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm much more comfortable with physical, sort of non-verbal acting. That's kind of how, as we were coming up, just kind of teaching ourselves filmmaking, making these goofy little movies after school and on the weekends in high school with Jeremy and myself and those other guys. That's all it was. Nobody was doing, you know, David Mamet monologues. It was all jumping over car hoods and leaping out of windows and stuff like that. So that's the foundation, and that's very comfortable. And so in a lot of ways, because Dwight is so silent, that felt very at home. And then when it got into more sort of dialogue-driven stuff, you know, that was a little more daunting, and I would just trust in Jeremy and listen to what he was telling me. And that's the same sort of thing with that scene that you mentioned. You know, I mean, if it works, if the audience feels that it works in that moment, then that's great, and that feels wonderful. But of course, we did 9, 10, I don't know, like a ton of takes of that shot, and it was a lot of just having to listen very carefully what Jeremy was saying. You know, like, that's too much, that's not enough, and finding this sweet spot and just sort of trusting, as I did with everything, that he knows what is going to work best on film, and he knows what he needs for the story, and just trying to dial it in based on what he's asking for. And so it was less about sort of having this preconceived notion of like, this is what we're going to do in this scene, and this is how it's going to work, and more about just like, I'll try it this way. No, not that. Okay, darling, I'll try it this way, and then just listening very carefully to him. That's all.
You know what, Jeremy? There is a monster and a man within Dwight, and you see that every once in a while with the way that he reacts, because at the core of it, he's, you know, a man who's just tried to do something, he's fucked it up, and now he's trying to make up, serve penance almost with protecting his family. But there's also a monster within there to a certain extent, especially in the scene where Wade is offed, and the way, the brutality, the reactionary that comes in when he stabs him through the temple. Talk a little bit about writing the character of Dwight and what your initial thoughts were with finding that balance of monster and man within him.
Yeah, I mean, the balance was certainly key to the character, just so we could, again, navigate the line between genre film, revenge flick, and more of like an emotional, grounded art house movie, because it was definitely designed to be both.
Yeah.
We didn't want to peg ourselves in, you know, as one thing or another, and it was all about the character, and the key was just remaining true and remaining grounded. And so it was a lot of exploring like what someone like myself or Macon would do in these situations. and to make sure we didn't heap on the badassery or the one-liners.
Yeah.
That he was compelled. He was compelled to do this act of revenge, but it was more anguish, it was more sorrow and loyalty, and it really wasn't about aggression or testosterone. And Macon and I have this. We talk about nonverbal acting. Well, it's really hard to verbalize directing someone in that world. And the great thing about Macon is he's also a writer, and so he knows stories. He's aware of all the beats and the context and the backstory. And it's just something you can't have a teaching clinic on set about how to sell a gag. And we had these notes like, why would Dwight ever give up the shotgun in the scene where he has to drag the body to the car? It's just like in the middle of sort of this pursuit. And that's when I'm very lucky as a director to just say, Macon, sell this gag. And he just knows it, and physically you can talk about it for 2 weeks, but until you just see it, and you got to believe it when Macon does it, because he's just so aware of his environment and knows how to justify gesture and action. And so it makes my life a lot easier when 85% of your film has no dialogue,
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was all about just making sure that he was true to himself, grounded, and one of us. Like any audience member, it was about that connectivity you mentioned early on, about making sure that the audience felt like, oh, this is me in a situation when he encounters a situation that is sort of scary. Dwight at one point gets the upper hand and has a weapon, has a shotgun at his disposal, but he goes into an alleyway and sees it's dark and there's somebody else that has a crossbow, and he just runs away. Like what we might do. He's not like governed by the rules of cinema and what you have to do to complete this action sequence. He bails. We kind of had to go and take these left turns, and that was part of the joy of writing. It was like doing things you hadn't seen done before, and you write yourself into a corner and then just right way out. It's pretty fun.
And one of the things, Jeremy, I noticed, I'm here with Jeremy Saulnier. I'm here with Macon Blair. Blue Ruin is the film. Check it out at blueruinmovie.com. Enjoy it in this holiday season as much as you can enjoy it with the holiday cheer and stuff. I think now, thinking back, I should have reversed that for a second there. But with that being said, you look at it, and there's some very pivotal action scenes in that film, pivotal kills, Jeremy. And choreographing those scenes, especially Macon with you delivering the performance you did, making it as real and believable, adding that aspect of reality to it, is so important. Talk a little bit, Jeremy, about choreographing those kind of kills, because there's times where Dwight takes it right in the leg with the arrow, or he cuts his hand, things that you and I probably would do with no problem, but Macon seems to sell it as Dwight so well. Talk about the choreographing.
I'm just a big fan of genre filmmaking, and I wanted to make sure that this could please that audience as well. And again, because of the nature of our story about it being grounded, we couldn't hyperbolize the violence either. We had to keep that super stark and super real, and for this to be ultimately a cautionary tale and a very emotional journey, the violence had to have a certain impact. So it wasn't really going to serve as a cause for celebration or applause by the audience. It's more like just nothing but gut punches. And so it was fun for me to explore makeup effects and fight choreography from that angle, because I used to do special makeup effects when I was in college, and prior to that as well. I grew up with all the Savini books, trying to do it myself and running blood pumps and doing squibs and whatnot. So this is a great opportunity for me to do a very grounded version, but have some showcases there for the genre fans and the makeup fans. And that was the single biggest line item in our production budget, as I knew you cannot skimp. If you skimp on the makeup, you kind of destroy this fabricated world that the audience is buying into. You'll pull them all right out of it if you come weak with with your makeup effects.
True.
But it was all about, making sure that it was awkward and brutal and real and ill-timed. It wasn't these perfect death scenarios, lopping off heads or with chainsaws. It was just like these really nasty, brutal stuff that just didn't go down easy.
Absolutely. And Macon, for you, being the recipient of many cuts, bruises, punches, lacerations, I can go down the list for Blue Ruin here. How are you with the reaction aspect of it, as well as taking the impact within it? I mean, that arrow comes from the crossbow, and you sell it really well that it's in there and it's going to impact you, especially screaming as you're driving away. Talk about that aspect from the actor's point of view.
Oh, that's just like, don't throw me in the briar patch. You know what I mean? It's just like that's my favorite stuff to do. That's what like we were saying, that's what we grew up with, just like how can we make the nastiest stuff possible. And that was, actually, that's sort of how, not exactly, but in a way that was sort of how my friendship with Jeremy kind of solidified, was over trying to perfect a gunshot squib effect, and instead of using just sort of like your hands to pump this blood out of a bag, to try and use firecrackers for some kind of like a detonation effect. Anyways, so that's always been in the background, and now all of a sudden we have these fake prosthetic legs that we got to fly down to Georgia, and one of the guys that works on The Walking Dead is making casts of our legs, and there's like individual hand-punched hairs in the leg, and it
Wow.
looks just so eerily real. So it's all these toys that out of nowhere we get to play with, like a pumping leg wound effect and a pumping hand wound effect, and all these just cool, fun prosthetics. So it was like being a kid in a candy store, just getting to have all these awesome toys to play with.
Wow.
If anything, it was like, you get a little bit too excited, and the tendency is to just go full, like, ah! And then, maybe not that big. We can try to tone it down a shade or two. But yeah, that was some of my fondest memories of that shoot, was getting to do all the nasty stuff.
Man, Macon, listening to you and the fact of Kid in a Candy Store, I think, is a great analogy with it. It fits really well because there's so much out there for the character of Dwight. And as it goes on, one of the things, and Macon, first I'll start with you on this, there's a lot of symbolism in this film, in Blue Ruin. There's a lot of items that show up at key points in the narrative, the keys being one of them, the yearbook, the scrapbook, the knife. I mean, there's a whole slew of them. In handling responsibility like that and, making these items an important part of the story takes more than the director and the writer and stuff. It takes the actor to really kind of sell that to the audience. Talk about the symbolism in the film, and also the fact of those kind of items and how crucial they are to Dwight as a character in the story.
Well, I think it kind of actually comes, and maybe Jeremy can correct me on this, but I think if there is symbolism there, then perhaps that's something that the viewer can decide for themselves, or maybe it's something that occurred to us after the fact. But
Gotcha.
It seems like all of those things were written in to the script in the first place out of that sense of pragmatism that Jeremy mentioned before. Like, Dwight is a fisherman. He's a homeless man, but he gets his dinner fishing, and so he would have a fillet knife around, and that would be handy. And in absence of any other kind of weapon, that's what he would be forced to use to go on his mission. And when he's cleaning up his sister's house, like she had mentioned earlier, that a bunch of his old stuff is still there, and so it would make sense that he would have the yearbook there. And these things all just serve the plot. Like, the yearbook leads him to his old buddy, and the knife leads him to, that's his weapon of choice. But it's just things that would be there in a practical sense. And then if they end up representing anything like his past or anything like that, then it's kind of secondary. I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but I don't even recall us ever really talking about those things in that way. It was more like Jeremy would show me 5 photographs of different fishing knives and the discussion would not be what does this represent. It would be like, which one is most practical for Dwight to use? What do you think? What would he have? And so it was all sort of worldly and grounded type of conversations, as opposed to representative, symbolic conversations, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes sense. And Jeremy, follow up on that. Is Macon on the right track with that, or is it a different perspective and eye for you being the director and the writer?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of textures and layers in this movie, but it was about having fun with this character and getting to explore things that you're not usually allowed to. Like, also interrupting scenes. Like, when Dwight finds his yearbook, amongst these cardboard boxes in his sister's house, he's about to indulge in a little emotional trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
And, that's when the Cleveland brothers show up in his old Pontiac and the night invasion scene starts. So we definitely kind of made sure that Dwight was constantly getting hammered, and whenever there was a chance to do these sort of traditional emotional or symbolic things, that he just got interrupted, and it was not convenient. But yeah, and the keys, they're definitely a motif, and they are very present, and it did sort of change, but it evolved from me loving to explore minutia and these practicalities that are always glossed over in movies. We spend quite a few scenes and a lot of screen time with Dwight trying to just find a gun, which in any Hollywood screenplay would just be, an eighth or half a page, little exposition, or cut to a dark alleyway and, get a gun from Smitty. Convenient character that's part of his past. But Dwight has to go on a mission to procure a weapon, and he tries to buy one, can't afford it, thinks about shoplifting, thinks again, smashes into a car, finds a gun, it has a trigger lock on it. It just he gets bogged down, and the whole narrative gets derailed time after time. So I definitely thought it'd be fun. But the keys are one of those things, like, I'm always checking my pockets for my wallet and keys, and just everything's always so damn easy in movies, and I feel like a fuck up here in the real world, because it's just never that easy to do anything, to get groceries. So, but the keys did later symbolize, Dwight sort of, he's been shot, he's kind of having this drunk conversation with himself and trying to warn another character off, how to find a way out, and he's obsessing about the keys, and it is about, Dwight clinging to the past. It is about Dwight trying to lead someone off to safety, but it ends up just like, so much of this film hinges upon these little details, and so the physical motifs that show up again represent that. It's like my love of detail, and having finally a chance to explore things that are always glossed over. Like Macon mentioned, cleaning up his sister's house. There's an epic sort of, or on this scale film, a mini epic night invasion sequence with shotguns and crossbows and all kinds of, the most setups we did in the entire film. Many overnight shoots to get this done. And when this big set piece is over, that's when the movie goes on. But Dwight has to circle back because he feels obligated just to clean up the crime scene. Just sweep up and patch up this broken window and tidy up. I've never seen it before in the film. and it's not about forensic cover-ups. It's about just being polite.
You know what? If I may follow up on that, there's also a respect and almost an empathy that Dwight shows throughout the film. He understands, and the great line. I would forgive you if I'm going to mess up the line. Macon, you know what? You're here right now. Give us the line, Macon.
I'd forgive you if you were crazy, but you're not. You're weak.
I love it. You know what? That line is one of those punctuation marks that kind of takes the film into the next segment of it. And Jeremy, one of the things that I noticed is you went from segment to segment, and the Ghost even more with it is the use of color in the film, and how there's a variety of different. There's a tone and feel from the beginning in Rehoboth Beach, working your way into Virginia, and seeing the evolution and growth and the follies, almost in the sense of Dwight. Talk a little bit about the color and the feel of the film as it progressed through Blue Ruin.
Yeah, I mean, having written the script with all the locations in mind from the very beginning, it was very easy to sort of visually structure the movie and know what I wanted out of it. And I talked with our production designer about just sort of making sure that the palette of the film shifts, and that it sort of starts off with these tans and cool blues and purples and the neon lights of the boardwalk. And then it sort of, as the film evolves, the character of Dwight devolves and sort of regresses back into this childish state, as he's kind of tracing the history of his family and the family that caused him so much harm, and which this event that sort of sets the whole film in motion took place 17 years prior. And it's all about getting back to that point when Dwight was a teenager in the 90s, and to symbolize that journey, we kind of had all the color palette shift as he goes from this beach town to his hometown to the sort of forests of Virginia. It got earthier, it got warmer, and the greens and the browns took over as the film ends, and into the everyone's bathed in very, very warm light. And so that was definitely by design, and it helped us again punctuate our story visually, because it was so reliant upon color and framing and Macon, alone with himself.
I was going to say, Macon, if I may say, with the colors and the feel of the film also goes to facial hair for you. And someone who sports a beard majority of my life, a lot of people think I was born with my beard, the way it grows. You really transitioned from Dwight, the homeless beachcomber, fisherman, a man who's really off the grid, and that's something that's very impossible almost to do in modern day society. And again, there's holes in why you get there and what's going on. There's more to it than meets the eye, especially when you're brought into the police station and you're actually put there with protection, saying, I want to be here for you when you find this out. There's an element of danger almost to it. But your appearance changes based on necessity, based on the actions that have happened, whether on purpose or by accident. Talk a little bit about the physical changes that happen from Dwight moment one to Dwight 90-some-odd minutes later.
Well, first of all, that beard was the biggest pain in the ass to schedule around because we had to fly people in to get scenes with early Dwight and then get people back in for it was just like, because once the beard comes off, we couldn't Lord of the Rings it with a fake beard, so we had to be really sure we had everything. Anyway, we did all that juggling, and it was just we had started growing the beard way early. We kind of even before it was entirely clear what type of story this was going to be, we knew that it was going to be a very haggard, shaggy, hermit-looking type of character, and so just sort of like long, greasy hair and a long beard. We're going to be part of that, whatever type of story it ended up being. So we started growing the beard way, way early and just sort of put it out there that this is going to bend the universe to our will. If we grow the beard somehow or another, Jeremy will hustle up the money. And, once the beard came off, which, I guess we're in the spoilers, he's already committed his murder rather early in the story, and so it's just sort of cleaning himself up, changing his appearance so he can move around in the civilian world and reconnect with his sister. And there wasn't really much to it other than just shaving the beard, but it's funny because I always just would look at myself and think that I looked like myself.
Yeah.
But on the day, we finished the last scene with the beard and went back to the hotel that night, and Jeremy and the makeup lady and myself shaved it off. And the next morning, I came in to set and would say hello to these crew members that I had been working with for many weeks at that point, and they looked right through me. They had no idea. They were like, "Who is this dork in khakis and a Sunday school button-down shirt?" And so it was just sort of like an interesting little lesson that just a simple thing like a beard can totally change how you look. And people have mentioned that he just seems like a different person, and he becomes this totally different person with this transformation. But in fact, it's just a shave job, and then him just sort of carrying on with the same sort of fearful, I don't know what I'm doing kind of attitude that he's always had about the world.
I was going to say, you know what, Macon, I'm never going to look at you the same now that you said about the Lord of the Rings thing. I'm going to be thinking of you, Gandalf, with the beard, walking into Wade and saying, "Thou shalt not pass," and hit down the
Jeremy gets a lot of, like, I'm a collaborator and I'm willing to accept a lot of outside ideas, and the fact is that's not true. I was really trying to work some magic into this, and I wanted Dwight to have a staff and a robe, and he was very adamant that, like, no D&D shit.
Oh, man.
So I was very disappointed by that.
Oh, my God. The blue rune of the rings. I can see it right now. I love it.
Well, we can get 3 movies out of this motherfucker instead of 1. And he was like, no, I'm trying, like,
far too lean for that one.
I'm here with Macon Blair. I'm here with Jeremy Rounier on the Horror Happens radio show, Homegrown Radio. And I'm getting off track here for a second. Okay, so we talk a lot about it, Jeremy, with Sundance. And one of the things that caught my eye as I was leading into this conversation was the fact that a lot of people were surprised that, Sundance, Cannes, TIFF, how well the film is done. The awards, it's went ahead and accumulated the recognition it has. And it's partially Kickstarter funded. It's a small part, but still it's Kickstarter funded to a certain degree. And you see the success with fan funding and the way people get behind the project. Jeremy, talk about that experience of the Kickstarter and the fan funding. And, beyond the financial numbers, how much did it really affect you to see that kind of support behind Blue Rune?
Well, it was great because, when we did go out and try and raise money through traditional avenues, it never feels good. Like, hey, no one wants to fund our movie, or they do without Jeremy and Megan in it, or whatever the case is. It's just so hard to break through.
Yeah.
And I'd been reluctant to do Kickstarter because I just thought, this film had a shot. I had some money saved away, and I wanted to fund it myself, and it's a commercial endeavor. But I think we did it how I feel most comfortable doing it, which is, never asking anyone else to do more than you would, and we let ourselves dry and put in all the money we had. And so Kickstarter was a sort of stopgap, where we had to reach a certain threshold of cash, so we couldn't make the movie. And so we went out after we had exhausted all our opportunities, and my wife and I pretty much devoted our life savings to the movie. Then we asked for help, and then we got this great outpouring of support. And it did help the process with the confidence in the project. It helped us have to pitch it to the public. We had to sort of really get a mission statement together, make a video, and write copy, and all of making. We had all kind of worked in advertising before, and we were able to utilize all of that sort of skill set to finally promote something we were actually fully invested in financially and emotionally, and it was great. And we got 400 plus backers, and we raised $38,000, which is even $3,000 more than we asked for. And it helped in many ways. We met our fundraising goal. We had 400 people to answer to, and so that helps put the pressure on not only making that movie or going through production, but finishing it and doing your best to just give people their money's worth, whether it was $5 or $5,000. We had a whole bunch of people waiting, and we had to deliver it. So it really helped us make it across the finish line.
And Macon, for you, looking at the way people put out that support for film, and it's listening to you and Jeremy speak in other conversations and interviews, it's really hard to sell the Macon and Jeremy film. I mean, and Jeremy, you brought up a really good point about making films with your friends, how people kind of say, no, I've seen what it is. I've seen those backyard videos. I've seen those things where they have the people who, they've come through at me with so much, and, they make absolute stuff that you sit there and go, I don't know how this got funded. But making to see the Kickstarter come through to really with Jeremy and a select group bring this together with Blue Ruin, it had to be kind of awe-inspiring. I mean, am I close when it comes to that with your feelings?
I would say it's half and half. There's definitely a great feeling when people sight unseen are throwing their support behind the project just based on the face that, it was a neat little video that Jeremy did and a summary of the movie and some storyboards and stuff like that. And beyond that, it was just blind faith that they were putting their money in, and that it does energize you, and it does feel like you've got something to live up to. But it definitely also it increases the pressure and just a kind of like, the same sort of way that I was talking about earlier, where Jeremy's put his faith in me for this movie, and then to a somewhat lesser degree, all these strangers have as well. And so it does definitely sort of keep you up at night about, you really want to make sure you're not shitting the bed on this one. At the end of the day, once it's all done, and you get to tell them that, guess what? We finished the movie, and it's going to premiere at the Director's Fortnight at Cannes, and that part of it feels great, because then it sort of justifies their investment, and it justifies that faith that they had in you, and hopefully it feels like it was worthwhile for them because they participated in the making of the movie, and it didn't just disappear and wind up somewhere where nobody can see it, but it actually gets out there. It gets distributed, and it gets to go to festivals, and that feels great.
I was going to say, Macon, what are those festivals like? Because, I mean, TIFF and for Hellbenders, Toronto After Dark, as well as Sundance and Cannes. I mean, these are some of the premier festivals around the world. Yeah. And, it's, yeah. I mean, and it's funny because I see one of the videos with you and Jeremy, and are you speaking French?
They're probably not fluently.
But I see that, and it's so many different cultures and a respect for the movie around the world. And Macon, first for you, how is it doing the festival circuit, not only on Blue Ruin, but also, I'm sure at some point with Hellbenders also?
Yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming. It was just, it's one of those things where you kind of have hoped and worked to get to those places for so long that they start to feel unreachable, and it's just sort of like something that you're going to get to at some point in the future after a bunch of intermediary steps, and then all of a sudden you're there, and people are clapping you on your back and speaking to you, and heaping very, very kind words on you, and it's kind of overwhelming and in a way kind of embarrassing even, but it's certainly what we had hoped for. We were not trying to make an insular little movie that only pleased ourselves. We really wanted people to be able to go in and have 90 minutes of a really good time in the theater. And so when they tell you that they feel like they had a great time in the theater, then it's like that was the goal. That's what we were after. So it's very gratifying.
And Jeremy, for you, the festivals, I mean, you had a little success before with the festival circuit with your previous project, Murder House, and it's, Blue Ruin really kind of culminates all that hard work, dedication, and sacrifice with you, your wife, your family, Macon, everyone involved. It's, I mean, gratifying, I would suspect, is not even close to being the correct word for it.
No, I mean, it's sort of the dream scenario, like winning the lottery as far as the independent film game. And I still haven't I mean, I'll still wake up in the morning some days and just be like, what the fuck just happened to me? And this is, over a year ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago, the journey started, and it was just like, just unbelievable. And it's exciting because we were giving up hope. We were sort of resigned to the fact that, it's too political. You have to know somebody. We're never going to reach that top tier festival. And with Blue Ruin, we just kind of broke through with director Fortnite, and we got in on the film's merits. And because the artistic director of that program, Edward Laintrip, was just really into the movie and found what he thought was a little hidden gem, and it had not premiered elsewhere, and he could really take ownership of it and put a stamp on it. And so that's where it became logistical as well. So we, having broken through into the Cannes premiere zone, is the filmmaker's dream. But because we hadn't been selected by Sundance, well, then we were a world premiere, and so we were given a Saturday first weekend slot, and that affected our sales. People came to our screening. We sold it within hours. That led to a feeding frenzy because genre fare does well. It's not a ton of dialogue, and so it translated across many territories across the world. And and then getting festivals was a lot of invites. The application stopped. So this is after 15 years of trying to break through, and always kind of playing that we were victims. We can't break through. We have these scripts we want to make, and we're seeing all this shit that's getting funded, and Hollywood makes crap, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, that sort of angst and that bitterness that I had, just like of failing, just never getting through, had to be erased overnight, because all of a sudden I was that shithead who got into these cool festivals and had just this amazing fairy tale ride. And so it's just a bizarre experience. And Macon says it was almost embarrassing. It really, at first, it was really, I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to celebrate it. I was just really a nervous wreck, because it's almost like survivor's guilt. Like, this shouldn't happen to me. Like, I'm that guy. I'm reading about myself. I'm reading about Macon in all these trade magazines.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. But I think the lesson is, like, just keep going and have parallel careers, because we didn't realize this wasn't just a roll of the dice for us. Like, let's make a movie. It was like, let's work in a field that we don't like, which is advertising, for over 10 years, and try and save up money and try and meet people and do whatever we could. So this last ditch effort actually paid off, but it was again, like many success stories, a very long lead.
Yeah. And you know what? If I may ask, Macon, and I'm here with Macon Blair, I'm here with Jeremy Saulnier. I butchered that the last time I said it, not this time.
No worries.
But Macon, if I may ask you real quick, a little off of Blue Ruin, Hellbenders, it's you're one of an ensemble that's a very fascinating group. You have very talented actors. You have a veteran at the helm. What was it like, to be a part of Hellbenders in really kind of a horror comedy, done very well, very effective, and also being put into a big plastered cast after falling off a bridge?
That was one of those things where J.T. Petty directed that, and he's an old buddy of Jeremy's, and I met him through Jeremy, and I've known him for many years. Very fond of him, and he had written that script a while ago, and the character's name was Macon, and he was like, we're going to have you do it. And then it went through some different changes, and it became a larger movie, and they were like, you know what, actually nobody knows who you are, so we're gonna try and go another way. And somehow, and I still don't know, and I don't want to know, and I don't care, but at some point it circled back around to a spot where they were able to fit me into this little role, and that was all I knew about it at that point. And then I started, I went in for a costume fitting, and then I just sort of saw they have the board where they have all the characters and the actors who are going to play them, and I had no idea at this point, and I just walked into this room, and all of a sudden it's the Kurgan, and it's Bubbles from The Wire, and it's all these people that I was just sort of like, are you fucking kidding me? And so it was a big thing about keeping a straight face and acting like this was all very normal for me, and I totally belonged here, and I'm not a fraud at all. And I'm just like one of the dudes, but I'm looking across the room at the Kurgan, and my mind is blown every day for the whole time I'm on that set. It was a lot of fun.
I have no doubt, and you know, talking to Gregor and talking to David Moscow, it's got some legs, and it did well, and it's another film this year that really kind of falls into a niche. And really, for those out there who are looking for something, if you're looking for the both sides of the coin, you have a very dramatic and powerful Blue Ruin, and then you have a very horror-based comedy in Hellbenders. Two films and making a tremendous job on both films. I just wanted to get it out there that it's very well done and shows the diversity of you as an actor. And Jeremy, you as being a great best friend and director for getting these kind of things done. And you know what, Jeremy, for you, before we finish up here, Green Room. I saw an IMDb. You know what? You're going to put Macon next to Patrick Stewart. This ought to be interesting. Talk a little. Instead of Gandalf, you're going to have Professor Xavier and Macon.
What's funny, you know, I was looking at dailies the other day, and I realized, like, you know, most of Patrick Stewart's scenes are with Macon, my good buddy from way back when, and it's just surreal. You know, it's like Macon, Patrick Stewart, walking past, you know, death metal bands and this crazy punk rock venue. So
yeah,
that was certainly a dream. And I will say, like, Green Room is much more of a solid genre flick, man. It is like my wet dream.
It's a romantic
22
comedy.
years old.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, it's like punk rock, you know, pit bulls, skinheads, all kinds of. The gore score is off the charts. So I cannot wait to present that to genre audiences.
Hey, you know what? And I think this is a good way to close it up here. Jeremy, first for you. And by the way, Macon and Jeremy, I thank you so much for the time tonight coming on the show and being a part of the Horror Happens radio show. But
thank you for having us.
My honor and my pleasure. But looking at Blue Ruin and now with Green Room, you're going from something very powerful and very serious and very personal to more of a genre flick. For you as a filmmaker, you never want to be pigeonholed. You always want diversity in your portfolio, but just you, the person, is it nice to be able to get the recognition and see with Blue Ruin and move on to something that is not as serious as Blue Ruin as a filmmaker and a person? Because it had to be a personal struggle and a lot weighing on you. Macon said it was a lot weighing on him with it. Is it nice not to have that weight on you with Green Room?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was by design. I just, you know, and I got to say the tone that we achieved with Blue Ruin, for all the constraints and compromises we had to do to make it, was kind of pitch perfect. I loved it. You know, I just thought we did a great job balancing everything, and Macon just wowed me. And I thought the worst thing I could do for myself and the critics and whoever in the audiences would be to try and do Blue Ruin 2, you know, to sort of maintain that exact tone, and I needed to sort of do a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
And so Green Room is an idea that I had floating around for quite some time, and I just wanted to do like a hard-hitting genre film, still has great performances and relatively grounded, but yeah, this one just definitely gets a little more batshit, and I think I would describe it as relentless. So it should be fun, and also it'll pave the way for me to do something else after Green Room that is maybe, you know, more in line with the tone of Blue Ruin and maybe more dramatic. But if I try and do the same thing twice, you know, I'll get bored with myself, and I think I'll just be out of surprises for everybody.
I was going to say, always looking for that challenge. Macon, same thing for you. Looking at Blue Ruin to not necessarily Hellbenders, because it's a couple years previous, I believe, but looking at Green Room now, is it a palate cleanser for you also to change characters up and change moods up for you?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, but that said, like I'm just kind of happy to work with, you know, to work with great people like Jeremy, like JT, and so if the compromise to get to do that was that I would have to do the same type of character over and over again, then I could totally live with that. That would you're not going to catch me complaining about getting to make movies for a living. But yeah, of course, it's a lot of fun to be like a goofy. I don't even know what kind of a priest he was in Hellbenders, and then this sad sort of damaged shell of a guy. And then it is a completely, without getting into too much detail, it's a totally different type of person in Green Room, and I'm totally grateful that to get to do that. And Jeremy wrote another really fun part for me to play, and I got to do it standing across from Captain Picard. It was fucking great. So yeah, I hope people like it.
Oh my God! You know what, gentlemen? I certainly hope next year when it hits in theaters, you will find the time to come back on the show and talk more about Green Room and the continued success for both of you. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to both of you, and thank you so much for the time. And before you say anything else, BlueRuneMovie.com on Twitter @BlueRuneMovie. Find it, check it on Netflix, DVD, Blu-ray. Get it for the holidays, and definitely one of the best of 2014.
Too
Thank
kind.
you very much.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
Gentlemen, have a very good night.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye. Macon Blair, Jeremy Saulnier here on the Horror Happens radio show, Homegrown Radio. Fantastic.